why does my HR department hate me? Why do you say that?
Well, the HR department, people used to assume, I mean, true or not, 30, 40 years ago, when I first entered the market working, you had a personnel person, you had a payroll person. These were people that were low level people that they serviced you. What happened was that there was different type of management techniques that came in, like Six Sigma and so forth, and they needed compliance officers. They needed to make sure that people were complying with different work functions that across the board and across all sorts of different fields of talent. What happened somehow, and it happened mostly at corporations like General Electric, and that they brought in the personnel department, changed it to human resources, and it was not about just acquiring talent and firing people. It was also about maintaining them and managing them, manage them like resources, like a copy machine or anything else, and making sure that they worked correctly. So basically, you're the copy repairman, but you're not. You're the employee repairman. If you're the HR executive, you're the person that makes sure that this cog in the machine is working. And that's what employees have become, cogs in the workplace, not so much creative partners in an enterprise, but sort of disposable products.
Well, Cliff Weathers, I mean, one of the things we've seen at the macroeconomic level in the last 30 years or so, right around the same period of time, is that productivity has continued to soar, meaning that there's much more profit per worker being generated. There are a lot of reasons for that, but I'm wondering, and yet none of that is going to people in the form of wages. There's just a lot more profit being generated and kept by the 0.1%, the 1%, and so on. So I guess part of my question is, could some of that be because your friendly personnel department that you could go to when your boss was drinking too much or whatever has now become the human resources department designed to squeeze as much out of you as possible while giving you as little as possible?
No, that's precisely what it is. I mean, a lot of times what they try to do is the idea is to keep productivity high, but also to keep wages flat. And part of it is to get rid of people at a certain point and bring in new people to replace them at probably at lower wages. And there's a lot of it to do with when companies decide to pivot or change. They decide that the employees that were there for a long time, they can't change along with the company. So a lot of times what happens is they have a change in direction. So the excuse to get rid of a 10 or a 15, 20-year employee is to say, well, this person hasn't adapted to the new technologies or the way that we're seeing things, and we're trying to bring in people that are more like what we want, which, is not a really good argument. But in the meantime, this is, you can bring in somebody at a lower level to do the job, somebody that doesn't have the experience or doesn't have the talent, and kick in. There's an ageism component too. Kick the person that has been there for a while out.
Oh, for sure, absolutely, yeah. Because they cost more, and because there is, I think, in our culture, one thing that amazes me with our culture being so sensitized in certain ways, thank God, a little more than it was, that some segments to, justice, social justice issues, how whole segments of our society, including especially the tech world, can be so ageist and so sexist and displays such, and by ageist, I mean contemptuous of anyone over 30, and by sexist, I mean contemptuous of anyone who's not a bro. I mean, how do they get away with it? It used to be personnel departments would be the first line of defense against that.
I have no idea. I actually started working on in the internet in 1994 at the very beginning. I moved in from magazine publishing onto this. And at the time I was in my early 30s, and everyone I worked with was in their 20s, and I was made to feel like an old person back then. I'm wondering how people feel now that are in the workplace, where and this is no longer just the .com startups. This is like pervasive.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, we'll have to leave it there. But you've been doing some great reporting on this subject. I'm really glad you came on the show to talk to us about it. Cliff Weathers, senior editor at Alternet. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
You too. We will be right back after this. I am Richard RJ Eskow, and this is, wait for it, this is the Zero Hour.